Welcome to the Godly Business Podcast, where we discuss sales fundamentals with godly principles. I'm your host, Anne Jean Pierre. Today's episode is brought to you by Better Sales Women, where entrepreneurs learn to master the sales conversation and 3x their income. To learn more, visit bettersaleswomen.com. Welcome to another episode of the Godly Business Podcast. So, today we're going to continue our conversation of sales fundamentals and going to talk about doing your research to do your sales pitch. So, you're coming up with your sales strategy, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So, we're going to continue this conversation on sales fundamentals. Last week, we talked about knowing your customer, getting to know your customer, and then making sure you know your audience and pitching to them based on what they want, right? So, in order for you to know what they want, you have to do some research. Now, there's a couple things that you have to keep in mind when you're coming up with your sales strategy pitch. Um, the first one is when you're prospecting, as in to get your first meeting, and then when you are doing your actual sales pitch to close the sale. First thing I want to say is that your introduction to your prospect, meaning your first ever contact, is not where you do your sales pitch, especially if the person does not know you and you're reaching out to them via email or phone call or anything like that, or even setting up a meeting to meet them in person. Your first contact with them is just an introduction to get to sell to them a meeting, right? So that's what you're doing. Your first contact should be to set up a meeting to then discuss the product or service that you're trying to sell them. So that's the first thing you need to sell, not to try to talk to them and book them the same day, unless the person books an appointment with you directly, either on your website or if you had a webinar and they booked with you through that. That's totally different. This is the person booking the appointment with you. At that point, yes, you can go ahead and sell to them right away on that pitch. But I'm talking about you trying to search for leads and trying to book, a lead. Do not try to sell to that person on the same day. So when you are doing your research, you need to learn a lot about the person, right? Who they are, what their position is in the company, what they're doing right now. Are there major life changes happening around them? Did they just hire someone? Or what projects they're working on and things like that? All of those things are very, very important for you to research and get to know your prospect, right? All that builds into your sales strategy and trying to pitch to them. Now, when you are pitching to that client or prospect, you will building rapport based on the information that you have done in the research. Now, keep in mind that the first thing I did say is when you are building rapport, you build around the subject that you are talking about. You will have other people who advise building rapport around other things. Now, let me put a little asterisk by what I said as far as when you build a rapport, keep it to the subject at hand. Let's say in doing your research, you found that the person that you're trying to speak with, right, the executive or whatever, just had a baby. It is totally appropriate, of course, to end having the conversation to let them know, hey, congratulations on your new baby, right? Not related to technically the subject at hand, true, but it is related to something that you found out is a major thing that just happened in the person's life. So you are telling them that, yes, you are paying attention to them. So therefore, this information is something that you know because you do pay attention to them. There's nothing wrong with something like that. What I'm talking about, where I say do not build rapport around subjects that are irrelevant, is, let's say you found out this person, love basketball, and then you spend the first 5-10 minutes talking about basketball because the person loves basketball. To me, yes, a lot of people, some people will appreciate that, but other people also will just get annoyed. So that's one of the reasons why I'm like, I stay away from that. And also because you can build rapport. Okay, let's say you did talk about basketball and the person loved that, right? Great. You bonded over basketball. What did you learn in the conversation about basketball that will help you at the end of the conversation when you are now trying to close the sale, right? Most likely not much, right? So that's why I say when you are building rapport, keep in mind what it is that you're doing. So in your research, what it is that you need to find out. You need to find out what the person, who the person is, what they did before, what they have going on, who their customers are. Who, especially if it's a B2B sales, who their customers are. That they are catering to, what their customers say about them, things like that. If it's B2B, if it's B2C, like just business directly to the customer, yes, you can also research what the customer type is, but usually with business to customer, you're not searching each customers, right? So you're not researching each individual customer that you're going to potentially pitch to. Most of the times you don't do that, right? It's mostly if you're doing B2B sales that you do an extensive research on that prospect. Otherwise, most of the time, if it's B2C, you search about the customer, your customer type, right? So that's what we're going to focus on a little bit for the next couple minutes, right? So for B2C, your your research is mostly going to be about whatever the service is and product, and learning what is it that other customers are needing, what other services are on the market. And when I keep telling people to use Yelp, use other your competitors website to find out what customers are liking, what they are not liking, especially if they serve a similar demographic as you, to learn, and especially if you're new in that market, to learn what it is that customers are really wanting right now. And the key is right now, because what customers wanted 5 years ago is not the same thing that customers want today, especially with the push of everything that has happened, especially after the pandemic, with convenience and instant access. Things have drastically changed. So, because of that, you have to keep in mind that your customers' needs and wants, I would say mostly wants, but if the customer feel like it's a need, you have to address that. So whatever their needs and wants have changed, right? Their expectations have changed. So their expectations are much, much higher than what it was, say, 5 years ago. So because of that, you have to understand what it is that their new um, found need or interest is, to deal with that directly. So one, like I said, is to find out what people's reviews are, what is it the expectation were that were not met, all of those things. So then when you are doing your pitch to that customer, you are able to um, have the conversation with them in a different way. Now, most of the time with customers, again, depending on what it is that you're selling, right? Now, if it's a low, um, like a entry price point, right? An entry price point to me is like anything 500 or less. Usually you don't necessarily need to have multiple contact points with customers, right? Most of the time you could sell to them the same day. You could do your presentation, your pitch the same day. Um, Things that are $1,000 or more, depending on what it is, sometimes you may have to do the pitch more than once, but not really. So when you think about it, a car, when someone's buying a car, a lot of times the customer will do multiple research on the cars, right? They will go to multiple dealership and things like that, look online, find the car they want and things like that. Now, you need to understand that if you're a car sales person, but you also need to understand that if the person leaves your office, pardon me, if the person leaves your office, the likelihood of them coming back is slim to none, right? So even though, yes, it's a higher package and the person is doing their own research, what your job is to try to sell to them that day. Those type of high package deal consumer products, um, you have to try to close the deal that day. Now, when I was talking about, you may have to have multiple pitch meeting with them, is for other projects, like if you're in construction or something like that, right? It's a long term project. It's something that's going to take, um, it's not like a 1 day transaction, right? It's a higher package, but it's not a 1 day transaction. So you going to do a remodel, right? You're an interior designer, you're a construction person. So your pitch may have to be different from your first introduction to get to know the customer and things like that versus now the next time you're doing your presentation to sell to them, right? Same concept as B2B when it comes to those type of products or well, mostly services that you're doing, because I do find that with products, most of the time the product will sell itself if it's good, and you don't need multiple pitches, right? So whether it's $500 to a $40,000 car, most of the time the person, your client or your prospect customer, already did all that research, right? And most of the time when they come to you, they already know what they want, they're ready to go. It's just you now have to do your digging to build rapport, sell to them, get them to close at the same time, right? So usually with those products, there's not many search for, you know, scheduling your first appointment and then try to close and things like that. So not for that. But for big services like, you're doing a remodel, you're doing, it's a long-term project that this person's going to have a relationship with you for 30 days or more. Usually with those, you do have to do a first initial um, consultation, right? So that's why I say the first thing that you're trying to sell, whether it's B2B or B2C, um, on your, whether it's depending on the service, is to sell your appointment, your first appointment, to get to have the conversation. So not try to push the sale the same day. So what does that look like when you're trying to do your sales appointment? Now, remember I said on your research, you need to look at, let's say you're doing a B2B or B2C, and then you find out um, what, what are some of the interests and where the person is at, what kind of project, what's the scope of the project that they're currently working on, all of those things. So when you are pitching to that customer or prospect rather, is to go at it from the vantage point of telling them what it is that you find attractive about their product, service, them, that you want to work with. Why is it that you would like to work with them? And then from then, you can bring up conversations about, testimonials that you've seen on their website, their background, maybe on their about page, things like that, right? Whatever you found maybe on their Facebook page that they posted and things like that. Build rapport around those things that you found on your research. Again, all of them are going to be related to the business at hand. So that's what I mean by that. And then, pitch yourself to get an appointment to have a conversation to try to help them with their business. So that's the first thing. So now you have your first appointment set up. That's your first sales. You got that. Awesome. Now you have to work on your sales pitch when you get to their face, right? And now you're presenting your product or service. A couple things that you have to keep in mind in doing that sales pitch is, again, the person that you made the appointment with, is that the person that you're going to actually be speaking with on that date? So make that clear. Do not assume that, hey, I reached out to, you know, Jody. Jody is the executive, whatever, and my appointment is going to be with Jody. Now, most of the time, they will let you know, like, hey, great, this appointment is so and so will meet you, right? But let's say that didn't happen, because sometimes that happens where you thought your appointment was going to be with Jody, but you get there and it's with Smith. And now you have to sell to Mr. Smith, right? Again, why it's important to make the sales pitch about build your rapport around, you know, the subject at hand and what the business is. So when you get there, if it's not the person that you made the appointment with, you need to build rapport with that person, get to know who they are, why they're here, you know, how figure out if they are a gatekeeper influencer, or if they're one of the decision makers, right? Um, for B2B, sometimes it's going to take more than just one meeting. Not sometimes, like 98% of the time. It's going to take more than one meeting to close the sale. Because they're dependent on the size package or whatever that you're trying to sell. You're going to have at minimum 2 to 3 meetings, right? So, and that's not even realistic. It's probably more, but you get what I'm saying. It's going to be a lot more meetings that you are to you know do your pitch at. So you have to also keep a pulse on where you are. A lot of times when you're doing the introduction, you get your first meeting, and your first meeting is to do the introduction of the product. You still talk about benefits, you still talk about this and that, you still try to close, but your job there, keep in mind, is doing research. That's what you have to keep in mind, is to do research, but also showcase the product or service that you're going to try to sell, this B2B, why they should pick you, right? So definitely look at it as a multi-step interview, right? If you ever try to go for, like, if you worked in corporate America and have tried to go for, one of those higher management position, usually there's like 2 or 3 interviews, right? So look at it from that same vantage point. You have to pass this step first before you get to the next step, before you get to the next step. So in doing your pitch, realize who you're talking to and where in the stage you are. Why that's important is because it's going to make you focus or tailor your strategy, your pitch, your wording, your tone based on the audience that you have, based on which level they have. And of course, each level you have to sell to that person. You have to give them something to sell for you on your behalf. What do I mean by that, right? So let's say you're the candidate to, you like the 4 people that are pitching a similar product to this company. You definitely want to leave an impression with that first contact, if you will. So that first contact, you want to leave such an impression that that person will go to bat for you when they go into their sales meeting with the other people interviewing, right? So they could be, or, go to bat for you against the other interviews that they just did, right? So you want to make sure that you shine out. Again, do not pitch to the company as a whole. Pitch to whoever you're talking to and what their interest would have been in that product or service, and um, how it would help. Asterisk by what I just said. If you are talking to a gatekeeper, is going to be depending on where the gatekeeper is, right? So, like I said, your first conversation, maybe try to schedule the appointment, right? And I'm sorry, my voice is changing on y'all. Let's say you're trying to sell, your first appointment is to sell to the gatekeeper. He or she, you will need to find out what their interest is in getting you there, what's in it for them. So you also have to get to know what that customer is. What is something that ask questions like, why is it that they would be interested in looking for this product, right? Or switching product now, or whatever. Ask a lot of questions to get to have a feel for the environment. Is it an environment that is easy to accept change? Or is it an environment that is resistant to change? Right. So a lot of times the gatekeeper, when you're talking to them about that, will be very, very upfront with you. Right. Because they have skin in the game, but not like the exec or some of the decision makers. So you definitely want to get to know, the details, the tea, if you will, on, and have a pulse for the environment. Once you have a pulse for the environment, you can draft your questions even better. So let's say, and doing your research, you find out that, okay, so the people there, um, okay, the last product that they were using have XYZ, or that the the reason why it's no longer working is because of a relationship that went sour. And that's why now they are no longer wanting to deal with this company. Example, for this is this is gonna sound weird, but stay with me. Do you guys, anyone who shop at Costco probably remember that Costco used to accept American Express, right? That was the card that you had to have to um, shop at Costco. And then Costco changed from American Express to Visa. Now, anyone who knows Costco is a multi-billion dollar company. They're everywhere. So having a relationship, that type of relationship exclusively with Costco is huge for for American Express. Well, the new person that came in soured that relationship. Soured that relationship to the point now where whoever the decision maker, whether it was a CEO or sales exec, whoever, they no longer wanted to continue the relationship, not because of the product itself, but because of the relationship. Now, the company that came in um, to, sells to them knows that background story, right? Do you think they didn't use that to their advantage to get in? Do you really think they didn't think of that to be like, hey, I'm going to slide in based on this information and then use that as leverage, not necessarily in a negative light, right? But you could use that negative information and that negative influence of the previous partner to shed light on yourself. So those are the information that when you are coming in to do your pitch and your research that you want to think of and build your sales strategy around that, because every information that you get is what I call the golden nuggets that you will use in building your sales strategy, building your sales pitch, building your sales flow, and using your words wisely and making that relationship work, right? Because what you don't want is make the relationship sour. And that's why I said building rapport is important, but you also have to be very careful on how you build rapport. You have to be strategic about it. It's not just oh, we're going to talk about sunshine and rainbows before we get to that. That doesn't work every time. That doesn't work with every exec, and that does not help you and getting to know what it is that you need to build your sales strategy on. So when you are building your sales strategy, I want you to write four things. Those are the only four things I want you to think about. Of course, there's more to the sales strategy, but these are four things I want you to keep in mind. First is, what do I not know that I need to know? What do I not know that I need to know? I need you to, so that's one of the things that you need to figure out. What do I not know that I need to know? The second thing is, why, especially if it's a product or service that they've used before, why are they switching? Why would this product, um, especially if it's something that they're actively looking for to switch, right? So if they're actively looking to make a switch, why are they switching now? What happened? You need to know that. You need to understand why they switch, why now. If it's not something that they're actively looking to change, but you are trying to offer them the change, is to understand, okay, why now, and what benefit it would be for them to switch to me. What is currently in their relationship and with the previous, or the current system they're using, the current product that they're using, what flaws are there now that may be a pet peeve that is annoying to them, but they're like, I don't feel like it's fine. We'll just work with it, right? So find that out. And then lastly is find out, the last thing is to find out what it is that is, what's, how do I put this? I'm sorry, I'm having a brain fart in the last couple of minutes. Um, find out what it is that the prospect would really really want to happen, but is they can't really express it, right? So find out what's in it for them, and express it for them, if that makes sense. So let's say it's like let's just use what I just said, like the pet peeve thing, right? It's a pet peeve of theirs, but it's like whatever, it's fine, we'll deal with it. That's an example of something that you can find out what that is and then use that to help them, right? But they may not be able to express what that is. The other thing is, find out what other things are going on in the company, right? So did the company or is the company restructuring, right? Is the company going to make a huge change, like a huge announcement that they made that they're going to expand in XYZ territory? Those things are also part of your research, but how can your product or new service support that change? So that's what I want you to think about. So those four things, go ahead, write them down, and that's what you will use to start building your sales strategy and pitch. And when you're presenting to them, that you can kind of like bring it all together in your presentation. Okay. So hopefully that was helpful. I hope that you learned a lot, and continue to tune in to the series and learn more about, you know, your sales fundamentals and how to apply it and grow. So hopefully you've learned a lot. Thank you for listening, and I will see you guys next week. God bless.